Now, as we remember the harrowing events of the riot on Capitol Hill, we're also taking a look at what's being done to prevent an attack of this magnitude from happening again. New security measures and protocols have been implemented over the past 12 hours to fortify the Capitol and improve communication among police officers and between other law enforcement agencies. But there's a lot of work to do, and Capitol Police are on high alert today for any potential security threats. MSNBC anchor Yasmin Vossoughian joins us now from the west front of Capitol Hill. Yasmin, good morning. So walk us through what the security situation that you're seeing on the ground there at Capitol Hill is today. I see a large wall, it looks like, behind you. Have Capitol Police and other law enforcement agencies identified also any specific threats there so far this morning?
They have not. The Department of Homeland Security releasing a statement saying they have not identified any credible threats so far here this morning. And I would tell you, Savannah, as I drove up to the Capitol this morning, I am not seeing what I expected to see, right? Every event that I have covered here since January 6th, there were barricades put up. There was 8-foot fencing erected to protect the Capitol grounds. None of that is here now. There were trucks lined along Constitution Avenue once again to provide security and barriers. None of that is here. There was National Guard presence. None of that is here. That being said, a lot is happening behind the scenes. You have Metro Police, you have Capitol Police, you have DHS, you have Secret Service, all working in tandem to keep this area safe today on the anniversary of January 6th. Jim, let's push in on this camera above my head here. This is one of the military-grade cameras that was brought here from Afghanistan. We have about 4+ of these cameras all throughout the Capitol grounds, keeping the area secure. They're watching us literally right now as I speak to you, Savannah. So they're keeping an eye on everything that's happening on the grounds. And Jim, let's walk a little bit this way, Savannah, because as I mentioned, it's not something that I necessarily expected, right? There are runners out this morning running onto Capitol ground. You see the Capitol Christmas tree right there on the west front of the Capitol. I can walk all the way up to that Christmas tree if I wanted. Again, after January 6th, that 8-foot fencing was erected the night of. I remember standing here watching that fencing put into place, thinking to myself, why wasn't this put into place earlier? Nonetheless, none of those security measures in place. However, as we have heard from so many security officials, especially the chief of the Capitol Hill Police, they are ready and they are prepared for whatever may come. They have a 25-page incident report that they have placed put out there so that all Capitol Hill police officers are ready, willing, and prepared for anything that may come. And they have meetings now in place in which all Capitol police officers meet ahead of any major events. So a lot of improvements have been made to the Capitol Hill Police Department in tandem with so many other departments that are working to keep the city safe and the Capitol grounds safe on the anniversary of January 6th, Savannah.
Yeah, let's dig into that. But first, by the way, fascinating look there, because it is surprising to kind of see that, especially as I know, like you said, you've been there quite a few times over the last year, and you were there on that day, which we'll also talk about in just a moment. But so we know yesterday, Capitol Police Chief Thomas Manger actually testified in front of the Senate about the work his department has done over the past year to improve security within and outside the Capitol, some of which you just referenced. What were the big takeaways from what he said?
So they had about 100+ recommendations from the Inspector General as to ways to improve the Capitol Police Department when it comes to security measures in place here on the Hill. The Capitol Police Chief mentioning that 90 or so had been addressed and or implemented over the last year. They've had some attrition here with the Capitol Hill Police, about 200 or so officers that have left the department. It's fairly normal for officers to leave the Capitol Police Department. I think on an average year, on a normal year, they have about 80 officers or so that are leaving the department. They've had a little bit more, obviously, as I mentioned, 200, but nonetheless, a lot of changes have been implemented. Let's take a listen to what the Capitol Hill Police Chief had to say just yesterday.
I'm pleased to report that we have addressed a significant portion of the many recommendations issued to the department. In fact, of the more than 100 recommendations issued by the Inspector General, we have implemented and are addressing over 90 of them. If January 6th taught us anything, it's that preparation matters.
And as we have seen, Savannah, at every event that I have covered up until this point, I remember being here for the Justice for J6 rally and seeing the incredible amount of security that was put into place to protect against anything that may happen. Nothing happened. It was a fairly benign rally, 100 or so people gathering. but they have made some very significant changes. And I have to say, I was surprised to see one of the changes was to have meetings with Capitol Police officers ahead of any major events, considering the fact that isn't that something that should have been happening before January 6th? Nonetheless, the changes have been put into place, happening, and are continuing to happen.
And Yasmin, of course, I have to ask, I mean, this is such a sobering day for all of us as we look back at one year, but
it is.
You were there on Capitol Hill covering the events of the day as they unfolded, as it turned from sort of mild to obviously not that. What do you remember most from that day?
Okay, so Jim, walk with me a little bit, because I just want to show you, Savannah, I was like trying to think back to that day as I was standing here, and I have been over the last 24 hours as I was making my way down to Washington, D.C. I flew down last night. Last year, I took an Amtrak train down, and I remember being on the Amtrak train and seeing a lot of Trump supporters kind of riled up, talking about how they felt as if the election had been stolen, preparing for what was going to happen in the day to come. And I wanted to walk this way because I wanted to show you the vantage point that I had on January 6th. We were this close, if not closer. I mean, we were on the grass area all the way up to the stairs. And if you remember, obviously, it was 2 weeks before an inauguration. So all of the pomp and circumstance was put into place, I should say. Pomp and circumstance is not the right word, but all of the risers were put into place, right, in preparation for the inauguration. It was incredible for me to see people literally hanging from those risers, people getting in, breaking through the Capitol doors, the windows. We were up close and personal, watching the tear gas coming out of those Capitol grounds. And then here we are, Savannah, this morning. It is quiet. It is a Christmas tree lit up just a few days after wrapping up the holidays. People going for runs, seemingly as if nothing had really happened here, right? And we know what took place, and we will always remember what took place. And it will shape how we view our democracy for years, if not decades to come. But it's really surreal to be here this morning, knowing what I experienced here last year.
Absolutely. We will certainly always remember, and we thank you for your reporting this morning. And of course, on that day a year ago, Yasmin Vossoughian, thanks so much. Stay safe today.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.